Let's now invite Jim Townsend, former Deputy Assistant Secretary of Defense for European and NATO policy. Jim, good afternoon, and thank you for your time here on CTV News Channel. How are you assessing where we are with peace talks after that call between Trump, Putin and Zelenskyy?
I think we're in about the same place. There wasn't anything that moved the ball ahead. He did offer to say, let's do a memorandum concerning the process for a peace treaty. So in other words, let's put down a framework. What should the framework be? Which is important because they really do need to have a framework and a process for these technical talks to continue to lead to a peace agreement. But other than that, really, there wasn't much more than what we already know from Putin. And he's got big goals that he wants to reach, and he's not in any hurry.
You know, if we look at Donald Trump's post on Truth Social, he talks about how Russia wants to do big trade. He talks about how the phone call went well and how they want to end the war. But there are no timelines. There is, of course, nothing set in paper of what happens next. Your take on what the president is saying after that phone call? Many are saying it seems as though the U.S. is failing in terms of bringing about these two nations to peace.
Well, it comes down to having the right people doing these talks. I worked in a lot of what we did with the Balkans and also afterwards with other countries in terms of negotiations and coming up with agreements. And this isn't the process that leads to anything. And Putin is able to use not having a process to stretch things out. You know, he feels he can get what he wants on the battlefield in terms of Ukraine. But Ukraine aside, he does want to have trade, and he wants to have those sanctions lifted. So he's got a bit of a double game going on. He's stringing along Trump because he needs Trump to really push to lift sanctions. But at the same time, he doesn't want to give anything to Zelenskyy, and certainly not anything for free.
Right.
So
Sorry, you did speak about a process. I'm very curious, looking at this presidency where we are and the kind of efforts he's trying to make. The war was supposed to end within 24 hours after him taking office. Here we are 5 months down the line. That timeline is gone. What is the correct process then, as you mentioned?
Well, right now it seems to be ad hoc. There seems to be a feeling that Trump has that the only way this is going to be solved is by a face-to-face discussion with Putin, that the two of them would be able to sort things out. I think we have seen now, based on multiple phone calls, as well as Steve Witkoff's visits, that that's not where Putin is. Putin is trying to play for the best possible gain he can get. And when there's no process, there's not a set of diplomats meeting and an agenda and a time frame, shuttle diplomacy going on, communiques, things that kind of push along a process. If there's nothing like that and it's ad hoc, then you just bounce from one failed attempt to another failed attempt. And again,
but Jim, sorry for interrupting you there. We just saw some of those efforts play out or perhaps failed in Turkey as of last week.
Well, that's right. I think if those talks in Istanbul were played up to be potentially a game changer, that this was going to really put things forward, et cetera. So they were overhyped. And in fact, what they turned into is meeting between the technical teams. Mm-hmm. And frankly, the technical teams, that they do need to be meeting. That's what we do need to have. But it's looked on as a failure because it was hyped up to be delivering something else. So they can get something from this if they let those technical teams do their jobs and give them a process, a framework to work from.
Okay, we'll leave it at that for this afternoon. Jim Townsend, the former Deputy Assistant Secretary of Defense for European and NATO policy. Appreciate your expertise and time, sir. Thank you.
You're very welcome.